Thursday. Yeah. Now we are ready to go.
We don't have any,
I know, yeah. We're supposed to be Wednesday, we bumped that a week, or bumped that a day. But yeah, we are ready to go. Move. Oh, thank you. Just so you know. Which is fine. Yeah, we can do it off camera if you'd like.
I need to put in the right capture. It was used from the
I don't believe it.
What do they call, was it an ID 10 error? Is that what it is?
I don't know. Is that what they call it?
Idiot?
That's
That's what they say it is.
not like a secret NLID password.
Yes.
IT speak.
ID 10. ID 10.
That is called.
It's about remembering. It's very readable by
Okay.
neurologists. So, reading this book is so interesting. It's called Memory. It's called Memory.
I was gonna say,
I need this book. That is hilarious. So it's called Remember?
Remember.
Remembering. Okay.
Yes.
Hearing.
Yes. Okay. I'd like to call to order the meeting of Homewood School District 150 Board of Education for August 9th, 2021. Roll call, please.
Mr. Booth. Mrs. Marks.
Here.
Mrs. McVeigh.
Here.
Mr. Schmidt.
here,
Mr. Zimmerman. Mrs. Haverhorst.
Here.
Mr. Bosch.
here.
6 present.
Thank you. Mr. Zinnerman is on his way home from taking his daughter to college, so he is going to miss our meeting tonight. We have approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of July 12th, 2021. Are there any additions or corrections to that set of minutes?
Nope.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have future dates.
Well, this is the week that we have all been waiting for, right? So Wednesday and Thursday of this week, we are welcoming over 30 new staff members to our district for our new teacher orientation, so we're very excited about that. And then, of course, next week, the big day is Tuesday, where we welcome all staff back for our new teacher, our first day, Institute Day, on Tuesday, August 17th. And then our kids make their long-awaited return to us on Wednesday, the 18th. So we're really excited to have that. And then over the next couple of weeks, of course, we have our open houses at each building. More details will be coming from each of the principals on the format of those events. It'll obviously look a little different this year as opposed to years past with the restrictions. But we're certainly excited to have our kids back. And then also, one other thing I'll mention, Monday night, the Village of Homewood is hosting the Back to School Parade, which is kicking off at Irwin Center and proceeding down Olive to James Hart School. That starts at 6 o'clock. So we're looking forward to having a village-wide celebration on Monday night at 6 o'clock.
Great, thank you. We have several presentations tonight, and the first is about summer school.
Yes, we are very excited about the robust summer school program that we were able to offer this year. Obviously, with remote learning being a large part of a student's experience last year, we were very interested in bringing in more students than we would traditionally bring in. And given the size of the program, we wanted to make sure that it was run well, that all of our students and staff were serviced appropriately. So Kathy Schäflein, our Director of Curriculum, was in charge, but also we hired The two individuals that you will hear speak tonight give us a short presentation on how that summer school program went. So I'm very excited. I mean, Kathy obviously is going to tell you a little bit about the work that Nicole Donadio Madden and Elisa Williamson did this summer, making sure our summer school program ran incredibly smoothly. So Kathy, I will turn this over to you, and then you can introduce Nicole and Elisa.
Hi, everybody. These ladies behind me did all of the work for summer school. I can take no credit except being here as their backup and sounding board to help them out whenever needed. I don't know why it's not coming on. But so let me tell you a little bit about our planning for summer school. First of all, we went through the process of asking all of our teachers, looking at our data from last year, the students that were engaged and students that did not engage in learning, and their scores, grades, reading levels. And we invited all of the students that we really felt needed some extra help. And the response was outstanding. So much so that we couldn't invite any additional students. We did have a waiting list for people who wanted their children to join, but we didn't have enough room to staff it. So this year's summer school was bigger and better than ever. I'll start by talking a little bit about James Hart School. So James Hart School, in a typical year, they have 3 to 5 teachers and about 50 students. This year, in Session A, we had 100 students and 10 teachers. And in Session B, we had 7 teachers and 60 students. We also had 28 of our 8th graders that were going to be freshmen at HF High School. So that was, as I said, bigger than ever. We offered busing and free tuition for all students, K through 8. All of our 8th grade students earned their diplomas after attending at HF High School. We saw academic growth in our students, but really it depended on the students that really engaged in summer school. Absenteeism was a bit of a problem at times, especially at James Hart. We had 6 weeks of summer school, so we had about a week and a half off after school got out. First session of summer school, we had a week off at 4th of July, then we had 3 weeks of summer school again. And so it's only been a week since that's been over, and then we're back to school. So that's a lot. So there were multiple reasons kids were absent. They did call in, we did follow up with students. But if they were here, they did well. Those that were absent, we still need to support them, and that extra support will be given to the students throughout the school year. We had social worker on staff. We've never had that before. We had nurses on staff, and we've never had that before. As I said, the attendance was best during Session A. Friday attendance was a bit low. In Session B, it started to kind of taper off. Kids got tired. Teachers were tired, too. Churchill School. So Nicole Donadio, nope. Elisa Williamson. Elisa, will you step up, please? Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about these ladies. Did all of the scheduling for summer school. They were spreadsheet queens. They did newsletters, and they were there every single day for busing, for issues in the buildings. So with 3 buildings, the original intent was that they would be able to go to each building at the beginning of the day. Things would be up and running, no problem. But with that many more students than we've ever had before, we really needed 1 person at each building. Laura Hugo really stepped it up at James Hart. She was here to do other things. I was here as well, but she knows her students, so when issues happened, she was pretty darn busy as well. But some of the big things were the busing issues, and with that many kids with some social emotional needs, especially not having been to school for a year, it it was really important that we had a social worker here, and we had an administrator or a person in charge at each building. So that fell to Elisa at Churchill. She knows those kids. She was there every day. She was there for the teachers. She was there for the students. And guys, I just want to make sure we give her a huge thank you because that was a huge I know you can't see my PowerPoint, but I'll share with you later. We had for the Essential Skills Summer School, so those are kids that, according to what they did in the previous school year, were really missing some essential skills that they would need for the next school year. We had 33 third graders, so that was 4 sections, so that we had small class size. Between sections A and B, we had 6 teachers for third grade. Fourth grade, we had 26 students, 3 sections, and between sections A and B, we had 5 teachers. In 5th grade, we had 33 students, 3 sections, and 5 teachers, plus we had 3 assistants, 1 assistant per grade level. That doesn't include our special ed students, where we had another 33 students for session A, 4 teachers, 5 assistants. Session B, 3 classes, 8 students, 3 assistants, for a total of 125 students, 20 teachers, and 8 assistants. And that was just Churchill School, and this lady was taking care of the whole thing. We had 4 buses in the morning and the afternoon. We did pre and post testing, ELA and math, and we saw that the students that attended consistently, we saw growth from the beginning to the end. So, thanks, Elisa. Any questions about Churchill? Okay, come on up here, Nicole. Okay, Nicole Donadio Matted. She has been an extremely busy woman, not only scheduling all of this, but they did a lot of pre-testing of their students and a lot of post-testing. We brought in additional teachers to do that so that the teachers that were teaching summer school didn't have to, take up time testing the students. So she had coordinated that as well. Also, busing was huge at Willow. At Willow, the little kids, we have an assistant on every bus. And we have a bus shortage. So the beginning of summer school was a little bit tricky, especially at Willow. It was the last school to get out at the end of the day. And the buses often ran late. So we had worked it through. Right? She was fabulous, you guys. So please, thank you so much. Let me tell you a little bit about what was going on at Willow. We had 20 students in kindergarten with 2 sections, 4 teachers and 3 assistants. First grade, 51 students, 6 sections, 8 teachers, 3 assistants. And that didn't include the special ed, 2 teachers, 5 assistants, and 20 students. So a total of 113 students, 18 teachers, and 13 assistants at Willow School. They had 3 morning buses, and then eventually we had to do some juggling, and we had 2 afternoon buses. Their focus was on foundational skills, especially writing, pencils, and that manipulatives with mathematics was big. But most importantly, as we found out at all grade levels, those social emotional skills and learning how to do school again was really big for summer school. So that ended up being a really big piece of it. Anything else you want to add? I know they said it.
It was
Scott's
really
every
great
time.
to see the kids back in the building and the teachers back in the building and their dedication. And we made sure to tell the teachers numerous times just their dedication to the students, they could tell. And it was just a really astonishing thing to see them be there for their kids all summer long. We know what a long commitment it was, so we were really grateful for that. And the kids came with smiles on their faces every day. And they were like, well, when does school start? So it's just to hear that excitement again, you kind of forgot about what was actually going on, and it was a good time.
Please, do you want to add anything?
I would just say, I know the teachers aren't here, but can we just give them a round of applause?
So just to add a little bit to that, about how hard our teachers worked, I know this presentation was about summer school and our students in summer school, But here's some of the summer work that teachers did. In addition to all of those teachers that worked for 6 weeks in summer school, we also had curriculum updates. They were updating their pacing guides, aligning their standards. We had more than 90 staff members do summer writing work this summer for over 250 hours. We had training on the new math program. Over 50 teachers had that training, anywhere from 15 to 30 hours each. We had engagement workshops, especially with our new staff members. They did last week, they were learning classroom management and social emotional skills. We had 34 staff members attend for 2 to 4 days for an additional 16 to 32 hours. And we've had several district collaboration meetings, including PLC workshops, diversity and equity, which you're going to hear about, our district leadership team, RTI, and our evaluation team this summer. So all of those different teams work, which is another 75 staff members, up to 38 hours each. So yeah, our staff members work really hard this summer. So whoever says teachers have the summer off, not this year. I don't think ever, but especially not this year. So thanks, everybody.
I have before you guys
Yeah.
sit down, I do have a question. Was there anything that you learned or observed this summer that will be integrated when the kids come back next week? Were there any things that you went, oh, we need to make sure that we're aware of that? You talked about the social emotional piece.
I know some of what our teachers asked for was even more assessing, so that when we got our kids back, even the kids that weren't in summer school, for example, our first grade teachers asked, could we bring some of these kids in, like we do kindergarten screening? Let's do an incoming first grade and second grade screening. And they, so they stayed and they brought kids in and they did a little sign up genius to get appointments to see where the kids are so that we can hit the ground running. So that was one big thing.
I think to go along with that, it's like seeing the kids that we had come to summer school, they were invited for a reason. But we also know that there were kids that were invited, but also a lot of other kids in our district that they just need to get back into school. So I think like Kathy had said, the teachers saw that we need to get to know them. It's going to take a lot more of that foundational building a community than maybe years in the past, and taking things a lot slower, but still having that expectation of where we have it here at Homewood. So I think that the teachers really know what they're getting into. A lot of these assessments that they're seeing, we have a lot more knowledge of our kids before we even get to know them, which is good, but still building that community that we tried so hard in the beginning is really, really important.
Thank you.
That was the biggest, really. Our kids need to get that socialization again, learn how to do school,
Right.
friends, and community.
Well, I want to thank both of you. This was a huge, huge job and so important to the success of what we do. And you both gave up your entire summer to get this done, and I really, really appreciate it. And also a special thank you to all the teachers and the aides and everyone else who was involved to make this work for us so our kids are a little bit more prepared to come back and learn again. So thank you so much, and I hope it's something that we can continue to do in a bigger way than we've been able to do in the past.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, we have a second presentation tonight, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion findings. And Dr. West and Nikki Kerr are going to do this presentation. Do you want to add anything, Dr. McAllister?
Yes, I'll just say, dating back to the 18-19 school year, actually, the district, under Dr. Mitchell's direction, began our diversity, equity, and inclusion program. And there was a committee that was formed under his leadership that in the 1920 school year with COVID kind of got derailed a little bit. So we were pleased to be able to continue that work last year. And a critical part of that was to survey all of our staff. So a survey went out to over 300 certified and non-certified staff members, and there was also a component which Ms. Kerr and Dr. West will mention, a community component. And we're pleased to bring Dr. West and Ms. Kerr tonight to share with the board the findings of that survey. And this really kind of sets the foundation, what you're about to hear, and the packet is included in the report is included in your packet for you to review as well. But it really kind of sets the foundation for what the district will be doing moving forward. So we're really excited to have this work and the findings that you're going to hear about this evening, but more great things to come. So I will turn this over to Dr. West and Ms. Kerr.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay in the back? Just wanting to make sure. Okay, perfect. So I want to introduce myself. My name is Nikki Kerr. I am the Academic Innovation Administrator here at 153, and I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Phyllis West, who I will let introduce herself, but it was a pleasure, and we're very excited to speak to everyone tonight about the opportunity that we had to administer the survey as well as the findings from the report.
Hi, everybody. It's an honor to be here and to work with the school district on DEI. My name is Phyllis West. I'm a professor at Governor State University, and my specialty is social work and public health for over 30 plus years.
Wonderful. So the first slide you're going to see is kind of bringing us to our why we thought this was so important to begin. This is our student population in 2020. This data came from the Illinois State Report Card. You can see towards the bottom left-hand corner, our total student population is 1,919 students, and it's broken up demographically by each of our schools, Willow, Churchill, and James Hart, as well as across the board for the bottom total across the district. So we know that we have, out of that 1,919 students, 1,026 students identify as African American or Black. 4 of those students identify as American Indian. 7 of those students identify as Asian. 263 identify as Hispanic or Latinx. 475 identify as white, and then 143 students identify as 2 or more races. So our Black population of students is roughly around 53%, which we're going to talk about in our next slide.
Okay, so your student population for 2020 is 53.5% that are African American of the total. When you look at the staff population, specifically this is the school report card, and it looks at the teachers over 11 years, and from 2011 to 2020. What you notice is there's been very little difference in the population of white, African American, Hispanic, Asian, and so on in the change. The most drastic change you see on here is the fact that in 2011 you had, of the teachers, you had 90% who identify as white, and today you have about 84%. In the same, when you look at African Americans, you've had 8%, right, in 2011, and now 2020, 7%. And you do see a slight increase among the Latinx population. You had 1% in 2011, and today there's 3%. What is interesting, and probably what we need to pay attention to, is the fact that right now, although there's been little change in all of 11 years of this population change for teachers, you have had a drastic change for the population of your student body, and we're not keeping up with that. The questions to ask yourselves, and for us to all ask collectively, is how much of that change, and I think one of the principals asked this question, how much of that 7-8% has changed over time? How much of that is turnover, or just consistently people staying over time? That's something we weren't able to answer at this point. The overview of this study, we started meeting back probably in December, January, and just having a dialogue of what should happen in the study to provide us information and a roadmap to address DEI, specifically for 153. What we decided was, first and foremost, let's talk to the leaders and understand what's going on in the various schools here, and what are some of the discussions that they've been having over time, and information that we need to collect that they could use. That allowed us to create what's called a mixed methodology. We did interviews with 18 members, in terms of the leadership team, and that consisted of the deans, social workers, teachers, principals, curriculum staff, and administrators. With that in mind, we took those interviews. I interviewed each one of them, and from those interviews, they didn't know what the other person said. Semi-structured interviews, simply I asked them questions, they gave me response, and we followed up on those responses. With this semi-structured interview, out of that came the development of a survey, a quantitative survey. The quantitative survey was distributed to 330 employees, all anonymous. We do not know their names, we do not know what schools they're coming from, and we got a response from 219 of them, which is huge for a survey. And it also is very telling of how involved the staff and faculty are at School District 153. So once, like I said, the qualitative interview component informed the questionnaire for the survey analysis, and all responses of the analysis were sent directly to me. The school district could not touch it. They still don't know where it came from. It only came directly. To keep the fidelity of the study, we made sure that it would come directly to me. Out of those interviews and the areas that that evolved to cover, talked about readiness. How ready are we? How ready are we collectively at the school, at the various schools? How ready is leadership to lead DEI in 153? We also looked at, what is our structure? Do we have the structure to do this? What do we need? Do we have the organizational wherewithal to make DEI, the DEI changes we so desire? Staff relationships. How are our relationships? Are we able to communicate and have tough discussions? Are we comfortable having discussions about DEI? And are people safe? Hiring practices. What are the hiring practices? And what do they look like in this district? And what are the opinions of staff around these areas? Lastly, student equity and access. And we're going to go into some of those discussions as well. But that was the student equity and access. I'm not sure if the next slide shows, but there was a question that came up around student equity. They talked about, well, referrals, right? When something's going on with a student, how do they get referrals? And one question was, why are there so many referrals for African American students? And one staff person said, well, of course you're going to have more referrals, because if you have more referrals, if you have more African American students, therefore you will have more African American referrals. The question that we push further, that we still need to have the answer to, if that logic is the way we're going, then we also need to ask ourselves in terms of honor classes, and I forgot the language. What's that language? Accelerated honors classes. Do we still have majority African American students? And do they still have the same levels as you would see referrals? If not, what is that about? And can we look and compare those numbers? We weren't able to do that completely, and that's that's going to be recommended further.
So the survey question categories that were actually covered in the quantitative component of the survey, they were centering around diversity, equity, inclusion, workplace environment and culture, as well as leadership. So staff had the opportunity to answer questions in those different areas about their perspectives of how we're doing in each of those areas. There was also a question that focused on ranking of different priorities that we felt would help us, as we're looking collectively to do this work, move in a direction with our staff according to how they were feeling, where they would like to start from. So that was an excellent opportunity to hear feedback as well.
The ranking priorities, the ranking priorities, first and foremost, staff and leadership wanted to see an overall mission and values and goals. We want to emphasize as well as this is an opportunity to revisit the mission and to see, do you want to keep the mission the same or do you want to change it based on your values and your goals that you lay out? Recruitment of diverse staff was the second highest ranking out of the 219 respondents. That was the second highest ranking. Along with, following that, was building stronger relationships with the families and the community. A part of that work has started because there is a community assessment that went out, and how many did we get responses? Over 400 responses, and believe it or not, what's fascinating about that survey is that you also have about 400 written responses that need further analysis. You have 400 different responses from different people. That's amazing for a community to be that involved. And in order to further what does the relationship look like with families and community, we need to analyze that data. In the fourth ranking one, mandatory staff training for DEI. And then we go into student programming as well as curriculum. The recommendations that we're making, and feel free to ask us any questions because there's about 10 pages of documentation that we have not gone in, of course, and Scott warned us to be brief. But the recommendations, I'm going to cover the first two, is clearly the data shows what needs to be done. Most people who responded, staff and leadership, said overall they want to see action. They want to see change. And the most incredible and powerful change you can make is recruitment and retention of diverse staff. And let's think of very innovative ways to do that so that this district can lead the Southland in a different way of recruiting staff of color. Student equity. Again, that's what I talked about, and let's look at what that data shows, and how do we really work with our students here, and the referrals, what do they really mean? Are all referrals equal? Are some of these referrals, do they require a social worker or a counselor to support, or a different case management support for the children instead of just getting written up and sent to an office? And those, I'm going to let Nikki cover the next two.
So also looking at different structures that we can create to create shared leadership. We understand that the power in this is going to come from our classrooms and from our buildings. So how do we create those school-based teams, and hearing all of our stakeholders when we talk about that, as well as modeling the diversity that we would like to see. So starting with various positions, looking at my own position, looking at partnering, being able to model what we would like to see in action. So what are some different ways that we can do that? As well as intentional team building to continue to create a safe and supportive community. Having the opportunity to have been in our district for the duration, really, of my whole entire career, I've had the opportunity to see what an amazing district we are and what a supportive, not only outside of our doors our community is, but also inside of our doors with our staff and our administration. So how do we continue to be intentional about creating that safe and supportive community so people can feel that their voices can be heard when it comes to this type of work? So that was it for what we had to present, but we are open to questions if anyone has them.
Any board members have any questions or comments?
So the 400 responses, they came from community members, came from staff also, or both?
Right, so there are two different surveys.
Right.
There's one that was for staff, 330 were sent out, 219 responded. And then you had another community survey, completely separate, and that was 400 plus responses from community, which meant parents.
So were these like amended responses, like that was and then folks were able to just, or is it a combination? Or?
It was a combination. So you had a survey, and then at the end, we made sure there was a space where people can make comments to give them just in case, because we didn't want, surveys often restrict you, and we wanted to make sure every single time that people could really say whatever was on their mind, and we could just receive that.
So will those responses be shared with us, or they can be strictly to you for analysis, or how?
Great question. So we, great question. So through our partnership with Dr. West as well as Governor State, we have reached out actually to their Community Learning Lab, which is a student organization that they have there that Dr. West created in partnership with another university professor. And so they are going to be helping us analyze that. We've already reached out to that connection so that their students could get work and practice in analyzing those things, as well as we get the benefit of not only creating that community partnership, but also hearing what some of those ideas that they came up with, and then those would be shared with the board and everyone else as well.
And so I would assume that you're probably going to look at if there's like certain themes or try and group
Yes.
certain comments together.
Correct, right? So it's, although it's a survey, because at the bottom you have this open-ended question for any additional comments, now you, once again, you have another mixed methodology, which you have quantitative mostly, and then a little qualitative. And what you look for when you pull those comments, you're looking for the themes. You're looking for what themes are emerging from the words that people wrote.
I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what the themes are and some of the comments are and some of the ideas. I think that'll be pretty powerful and hopefully provide us some direction, I guess, if you will.
Absolutely. So the survey, the analysis is part of Dr. Lori Crowder. She works with master level students on research, and they get to analyze the data and just see the themes that are coming out. And I agree with you. It's going to be very exciting to see what the parents are saying.
Were there any efforts to maybe solicit the 34% of staff that didn't fill out the survey?
Sure. So I can tell you a little bit about what our process was and what we did, and then Dr. West, if you want to talk about saturation level, which you so kindly explained to me, or not, when you were talking through that about when we sent out the survey, we did send it out multiple times. Dr. McAllister did, with multiple reminders, again, trying to give a timeline for our staff so they knew when it was due by. And then I think Dr. West had explained at a certain level, you kind of know what responses that you're going to get. Is that correct?
It was like over a 3-week period, and there were 3 different times that the school sent out a reminder. And then also available was my telephone number to call. And those who, in the 3rd week, we weren't getting any more responses. So it wasn't oh, I forgot, or I was on vacation. It was over a 3-week period that we just sent out over and over and over and said, okay, I think everybody who wanted to answer already answered. And yeah, I'm not sure I answered you fully.
No, it makes sense. I mean, 34% of the staff decided not to fill out the survey. I don't know if beyond the point of maybe abbreviating the survey just to get
Well, you know what?
those folks to respond to something.
I think that what you're bringing up is very important, right? Because underneath that, what I'm hearing is you're saying, who are the 34% who didn't respond, right? And the one thing that we haven't said here, that this entire survey is highly skewed anyway. But it does represent your majority. And let me tell you what I mean by it's highly skewed. The fact of 84% of your population of staff is all white anyway. And that's who answered. What we were able to look at some of the patterns and what percentage were African American? Yes. 34? Probably like 34. total, 34 people. So it's highly skewed anyway because we don't have the diversity population number. And of that, yet is the reality of Homewood. And so who were the 34 who did not respond? It's hard to say because we only, now in full disclosure, I think about 12 just decided not to identify their gender or their race. So we don't know who those 12 were, or the 12%. I need to say that number. 12 individuals? Okay. So even if we get the 34%, it's still, if we're looking at diversity based on race, it still will be skewed because predominantly white staff responded. And also what's interesting is that there was what was the age group that responded the most? Yes. 46 to 55.
I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, I
And
saw
just
that.
a sneaky other little knowledge, and I'll stop right here, which was fascinating. When we looked at people who just didn't want to ever participate in DEI, they were around 50, in their 50s. I think they retired.
Oh, great question, though. Thank you very much.
You mentioned the referrals versus the academic and Excel courses, and that you were unable to get an accurate data for that, and the question was, are all referrals equal? Will there be a recommendation on how to move forward in order to get that accurate information?
Yes, and the recommendation is to do that analysis, right? To compare all referrals from the different schools, to see how referrals are done at each school, and is it a universal way of doing it approach? And then as well as how do you compare how referrals are done compared to how gifted and SPED as well, right? And is it equal, how it's done based on the different districts? And we have to begin to ask ourselves, why is it so easy to get referral numbers and not gifted and SPED numbers?
We were able to get our special education demographic, but gifted is a little bit trickier. And so one of the recommendations that Dr. West did make was for our administrative team to be able to sit down and look across the board at doing that comparative analysis so that we could take action steps moving forward. Yeah, great question.
I don't know. So obviously part of the process was to survey the staff, and so we also surveyed some of the community members. Is there going to be a comparison to see how each group responded, to see if one was more positive than the other, or if there was some similarities, I guess? So, you know, and I'm making this as an example. So if I'm a staff member, I'm going to respond a different way because I have one perspective. If Deb is a community member, she may have a different perspective. She may respond differently. Is there going to be some sort of comparison to see how staff reported versus community members reported?
It would be great to do a cross-analysis, right? I agree with you. It would be really informative to do a cross-analysis. I remember one of the outcomes is that the community wanted to know how decisions were made. That was, although they probably have access, right? I know we had that discussion, that you have access to your board meetings and you can pull it up. However, it probably some recommendations of sending out a fact sheet, right? Or something, I'm saying just like a memo of highlights of the meetings where it's easy to read, just some bullet points, things you should know type of thing. And just to remind community members who are probably not going to go search on a website if they're trying to raise children.
Great question.
Can I ask, for the staff that answered the survey?
Use the microphone.
Sorry, Deb, we have your microphone.
For staff that were given the survey, anybody who is having issues and feeling like they are not experiencing the equity and the inclusion that 2123 hopes to promote, was there an opportunity
quite sure. So I think through that space, Dr. West, we did give Dr. West information, so anyone was able to reach out to her directly, and so she would have the opportunity to compile that data if anyone had reached out to her. And then again, respecting the opportunity to have that anonymity. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm having my back to someone at all times.
It's okay.
To be able to express that, and then if any themes came from that, so that way we can gather that as well.
Okay.
Great question.
And then one more question. How many approximately surveys were sent out to the community? I know we had 400 responses, did you say? Okay.
So we sent it out to all of our, we know for sure that we sent it out to all of the households. Some of the households do have, it went to, because it went through Messenger, it went to, there were multiple email addresses attached to multiple households. So we had, I would say of that, we roughly have, as we've said before, about 1,900 families in the district. So we know for sure it would reach all of the families, and then it would have reached possible other households too, depending on primary and secondary variation.
Okay.
So that number I can get, I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, good question though.
So those were, that was family surveys, not
Yes.
community. We didn't,
Yes, and
right?
thank you for clarifying. We had the conversation about whether we wanted to initially send it out community-wide. The students felt, we did touch base with our students that had helped us create this, the survey at the Community Learning Lab at Governor State. They felt it was more appropriate to gauge towards just families at this point. Moving forward, we can always send something out community-wide.
I think it was
Yeah.
a really good decision, but I
Sure.
think that we need to be clear that
Families.
it's families,
Yes,
not
as
community.
opposed to
'Cause
community.
that could be a completely different set of answers.
Absolutely.
Right?
Thank you for
Yeah,
clarifying,
sure.
Shelley,
And
for
I
sure.
like the idea of starting with the families and then moving on in the future to the community-wide. Love that. Yeah. So what do you see as next steps? What are the immediate next steps that we should be looking to take?
One thing about DEI, especially in the era that we're living in, action is the most important, right? The dialogue, the diversity, equity, and inclusion dialogue is vital, just to have that conversation. However, if it's done without the action, it's just wasted time and money. So I would say recruitment and retention is the focus, and understand recruitment and student equity, right? Because student equity helps us to understand the cultural nuances of our students, whatever that means. And I'm saying culture to be very broad, be it class, language, race, LGBTQ, whatever that need is. So making sure that students are really heard and supported in a way that they, not deemed from the school, but through their voices. But the recruitment and retention of diverse staff, I can't emphasize enough, because we don't want to look at another decade, right? And to see the numbers that we're seeing 20 years down the line and say, okay, we're still in the same place. So yes, I would say recruitment and retention of diverse staff and student equity, while building those relationships, because the real work is going to happen at each school. At each school, to build the relationships of how do we work together? How do we have honest conversations? And how do we understand the voices, and are all voices truly being heard? Or are some people simply being polite because they don't know what to say, or they don't want to be perceived as troublemakers? And we have to have a creative space to understand the beauty of diversity and the strength of it, and make sure those voices are heard. If certain voices aren't comfortable and they're not being heard, then we could be missing out on a great opportunity to have even a stronger district.
So it sounds to me like maybe the number one thing to do is to make sure that our buildings are safe spaces for people to express themselves.
Combined with recruitment and
And to-
retention.
Yes.
Because
And
no one's going to believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion unless we actually see action. And most of all, I think I want to stress to the district is quality is better than quantity. You don't have to do a whole lot of things at one time, but you have to do a few things really, really well and then build on it instead of being overwhelmed and stretched, right? Because you're already busy enough just working and serving families in this area.
Anybody have anything else? Can I say something really quick? I've been on this board for, I think, 14 years, and this has been a constant issue that we've been concerned, I should say it's been a concern of the board and of the administration and the staff and families. And I don't want anybody to see this and think, wow, 153 needs to get it together already, because we have been trying, we think we've been trying, right? But I'm so glad that we're at this point where we can make some actions that will hopefully make a real difference for our staff and future staff and our kids.
And you have work to do.
Yeah.
And you're not alone. You can just be in the forefront of this change, and so many schools are in the same situation. And it's just about doing the work, and it's going to feel uncomfortable, and it's one thing to talk about it, right? It's another thing that we have to keep trying innovative ways to live what Homewood symbolizes for so many when they love they love living here. Staff loves working here. So there's evidence that Homewood has always been on the right track. It's just now, let's be on the right track that represents 53.5% of the students.
That's great.
Thank you guys so much, and thank you to Dr. Watts.
Thank
and,
you. Thank you,
yeah.
both of you. It's very exciting to see this sold out. It's something that we know that we've tried, but now we need to try harder and do better and get it figured out to do right by our students and our community. So thank you both.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who took the survey, considered taking the survey, and gave your feedback. We appreciate it.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who's come to address the board on any items that are not on tonight's agenda? And do we have any responses to questions or concerns raised by the audience at previous meetings?
We do not.
Okay. Any board members have any reports tonight?
Last week, Finance and Property Committee met, and we discussed, primary discussion was around the FY22 tentative budget, which is included in the packet for the rest of the board to see. Deb, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add? Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Kelly, on July 22nd, Personnel Committee met with Dr. McAllister and her. It was an extremely informative meeting. We began with Mrs. Kerr and Dr. McAllister presenting information. Kind of like what we've been talking about with this presentation here. And Deb, to your point, we have been talking about this, and there's been effort behind it. But the one thing that Dr. McAllister and Mrs. Kerr have done, along with Dr. West, is we're starting to look at data too.
Yes.
So data is going to solidify what we think we're doing and how successful we're doing it. So that was the beginning of that meeting. Dr. McAllister and Mrs. Kerr ran data hiring and retention from 2016-17 school year through past school year. And it's informative. I mean, it's telling, right? And I really look forward to delving into this deeper, right? Those surveys, it's like, I want to get in and read those responses. And I know we can't yet, because someone's got to segregate the data, but I'd like to read what people are saying as well. And then Dr. McAllister spent a significant amount of time in the meeting talking about what we know is a challenge to schools, and that's the recruitment and retention of staff. Recruitment especially. We know the numbers are dropping significantly of people that have gone into the profession. We'll see what happens coming out of the pandemic and how does that change. But those numbers are real now, right? The numbers of the people in the profession going into it and the people that are leaving. So how do we address some of our needs when those numbers may not be there? And some ways to be creative in there. Some of the issues are just simple numbers going into profession. What's interesting, Dr. Kelsey pointed out and hadn't thought about the competition amongst the districts. We always knew that it existed to a certain extent, but now, in ways that we might have been able to save money in the past by, maybe not giving all, person's years coming into the school district, other school districts may be doing that in order to capture that qualified candidate. Where now we have to, in order to compete, we've got to, almost like they're, in some ways, candidates are in the driver's seat, to work with that district. So we talked about what that might look like. Salaries and, other perks, things like that. And then Dr. McAllister filled us in on some current positions need to be filled and some options that were on the table. So, good meeting. Devin, Booth, anything that we missed?
I don't think so. No. Thank you. Any other board members have any reports? All right, and we have superintendent's report.
Yeah, so as a follow-up to the presentation you saw a short while ago, Dr. West and Ms. Kerr spent the better part of an hour last week with our administrators, many of whom are seated in the back of the room. And we had a very, very deep discussion of the information you saw tonight. You have the detailed report. You saw a summary presentation. So we had the opportunity to engage in a much more lengthy conversation about the implications for us. So that was a great conversation. I think I speak for all of us in the room here. And also, again, more importantly, it's not what you talk about, it's what you do with that information. So we have a lot of work to do, as we heard. The other thing I'll mention with regard to what Mr. Schmidt just talked about, the report on the hiring and retention data that I shared with the Personnel Committee, all of you have in your packets. And so you can see how we've done, at least for the last 7 years, including this year's, and I'll talk more about the people we're hiring tonight, but I do feel we're making progress, right? Have we gotten to where we need to get in terms of hiring? Absolutely not. But I do feel good about the last couple of years specifically. The key, of course, not only finding people, it's keeping them, right? And so the true test will be for the people we're hiring tonight, the people that we've hired this year, in 7 years when we look back, are those people still with us, right? That's the type of place that we want to be, a destination for people to not only come to, but obviously retire. And that's going to become more and more critical as it's becoming harder and harder to find teachers. So other items, of course, the big thing is the opening of schools, right? And Governor Pritzker came out. We were ahead of the curve in terms of masks. From the beginning, we have said we're following IDPH guidelines. IDPH had said the day after our webinar aired that masks would be required for vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. So immediately we made the decision all of our staff and students would be wearing masks to start school. Last week, the governor came out and said that that would be the case for all districts. Of course, that's a highly contentious issue in some places. I'm grateful that in our community, I think we have strong support to follow the protocols that our health professionals have deemed to be appropriate. So we are getting ready for school, obviously. It starts next week. We still have about 6.5% of our families. I've been giving you updates on the registration numbers. So as of today, at about 4 o'clock, 123 of our families that we're still looking for, we are hoping to find. They haven't yet registered for school. So that's about 6.5% of our families that we are going to reach out to. And if we want them to start next week, the deadline really is this Friday to get our documents in. So we're going to continue to reach out to them via emails and phone calls, and I know our buildings have done a great job of reaching out to them in that regard. Just today, the state released updated guidance. I mean, it's literally happening on a daily basis or at least a weekly basis. So we got new guidelines today from IDPH, slight tweaks from what we saw last week, and they also released an FAQ document at about 4 o'clock today. So all of those things are helpful. One of the items on our action agenda tonight is that you vote to support our return to school plan, which was posted. It's now on our website. So for all of our families who are watching at home, you can go to our website and see the return to school plan, which has many of the details that we have been working on to open schools safely next week. And there is also an FAQ document from the webinar on July 26th, where we received over 130 comments/questions, and I would say 70 to 80% of those have been addressed and answered on our FAQ document. So it's quite lengthy, but hopefully our families will find that useful as they come across questions. And of course, the reason we have such a talented administrative team who's sitting here is we're here to serve, and we want to be able to answer those questions so that all of our families, when they send their kids to us next week, they know that they are doing so in a safe manner. And so if any families do have questions, by all means, reach out to me, reach out to any of our administrators, and we will certainly get those answered for you. And last but not least, with regard to opening schools, the state continues to emphasize, number one, the most important thing we can do to safely open our schools is to get vaccinated. I mean, they say it time and again, so our community rate for fully vaccinated is now at about 55%. That's good, but that's obviously 45% that are still out there. So we strongly encourage people to get vaccinated. It's been proven to work. Is it 100% effective? No, but it certainly beats the alternative. So we want our families, our adults to be vaccinated, and as soon as we can get our younger kids at Willow and Churchill, the report is that vaccinations may be available this fall for them. So the more we can do in that regard, that will lead to a safer environment for everyone.
Thank you. Okay, we have several consent agenda items tonight. The first is to authorize the chief school business official to pay the usual and customary bills for September 2021. Are there any questions? Is there a motion? No, sorry, it's the consent agenda. My bad. Personnel reports. Dr. McAllister.
Yes, in your packets, you can see many of the internal moves that we have regarding staff members, assistants, some resignations. Again, those continue to come in even up to the start of school. We're pleased. One particular reassignment, an assistant who we're now hiring as a full-time staff member, so Mary Smith. That's always great news when we're able to promote from within. That's one of the best ways, of course. And then another really, really exciting position for us, another internal promotion. We had a parent coordinator position at Willow School, which in the past has been a part-time position. And we have turned that into a full-time position. You approved, and we're thrilled to be able to do that because we believe in the value of having a liaison with our families. And so, again, one of our own assistants is going to be taking over that full-time position. So Tanya Thomas will be transitioning into that role at Ms. Lawson's recommendation, and I know she's excited. The district is very excited, and we look forward to great things to come from Ms. Thomas as she transitions there. And then we also have some stipend positions for teachers at James Hart because of large class sizes to teach an extra section so that we can cover the classes that we need to cover. So you see some of those in the packet as well.
Great, thank you. Any questions on the personnel report? All right, we need to set the date and time for a public hearing for fiscal year 22 budget. So that will be at our next meeting at 7 p.m. And then we need to change the time of the regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting of September 13th, 2021, and that will be immediately following the public hearing. And we have to approve the consent agenda. So are there any questions on any of the consent agenda items? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented in items 10A, 10B, 10C, and 10D.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mrs. Bethay?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mrs. Gackenhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes. Motion carries. We have 3 action agenda items. The first is the second payment of July 2021 bills and the first payment of August 2021 bills. Does anyone have any questions on any of those bills?
No.
Is there a motion to approve?
Moved upon the recommendation of the chief school business official, the Board of Education authorized the second payment of July 2021 bills and the first payment of August 2021 bills in an amount not to exceed. That's all right. Let me pull this bill up and see what it says. Down the bottom, $847,871.43.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bethay?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mrs. Gackenhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes. Motion carries. We have approval of the 2021-2022 return to school plan.
Yes, and as I mentioned a moment ago, that is now posted on our website. Basically, it is the plan to bring our kids and staff safely back into our buildings next week. So I'm asking, obviously, for your approval and moving forward with that plan. We've received feedback, of course, from families on both sides of this issue, but I think a strong majority of the emails I've received and our administrators have received have been supportive of what we're doing.
I would want to mention that the number one overriding part of this plan is the safety and health of everyone who will be in the buildings, both students and staff. And the plan is designed to do everything we can to have as many layers as possible to keep our students healthy and safe, and our teachers and all the adults that are in the buildings healthy and safe, so that they can continue to come to school and learn. And I also want to mention that as a board, we really appreciate the support of the community. It's been pretty hard not to, every time you turn on the news, you read about a different community and a different school board, and the people are quite passionate, and people are passionate in Homewood too. But here in Homewood, the passion comes across with respect. And as a board, we really appreciate that our community trusts us and knows that we are making these tough decisions with the best interest of the community and our most precious resource in the community, our children, in mind. So I really cannot let the evening go by without expressing my gratitude to everyone who has individually reached out to us, or collectively reached out to us, or been so respectful in your discourse with us. It has made this job quite a bit easier than it is in many other places. So thank you all. Any comments or questions on the return to school plan?
So I read through and I thought it was very well done and very well organized and provided a lot of good, solid information. So hopefully, sorry, gotta check louder. Start again. I just wanted to comment and say, I read through the entire return to the road back to school, the plan document that was, it's now up on the website. Thought it was very well done, very well put together. Has a lot of good, solid information about what we're doing as a district, at every one of the schools. So thanks to everyone who put it together, everyone in the district who chimed in and worked on putting something together for all of our students to return to schools in person. So thanks very much to everybody. I think it was very well done.
Is there a motion to approve?
Moved upon the recommendation of the Administrative Council that the Board of Education approve the 2021-2022 return to school plan.
Second. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Motion carries. We have employment.
Yes, so as we mentioned a moment ago, we are still hiring. The administrators in the room are busy filling their positions, and I'm pleased at this point, unless I have missed something in the last hour or two, I believe we are fully staffed with certified staff to start the year. So that's an accomplishment. It has not been easy. I was just on a superintendent call today with South Cook. There's 66 districts in the South Cook region. There are still some districts, they did a survey today, there are still some districts that have over 10 open certified positions with a week before school. I mean, to put it into perspective, what we're facing, again, not only in South Cook, but in the state of Illinois and in our country. So a testament to our administrators who work so hard to find great people. And we are really excited. Excited about the people we have coming in. And like I said, on Wednesday, we'll see them for new teacher induction. So with that, Maya Hubbard-Manier is a perm sub at Willow. Lisa Went, second grade teacher at Willow. Leslie Berry, eighth grade math teacher at James Hart. Carly Zadarozny, sixth grade ELA and math teacher at James Hart. Shantae Heyman, a pre-K assistant at Willow. Timothy Rhodes, supervisor at Willow. Sarah Lynn Lopez, supervisor at Willow. Karen Massey, a perm sub at James Hart, and Jack Johnson, Brittany Bilbrew, and Shannon Townsell, all supervisors at Willow.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions on employment?
No.
Again, congratulations to all of you for finding us great teachers, aides, filling these positions. I know it was no easy task this summer. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved upon the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Education approve the employment of Maya Hubbard-Vanier, Lisa Wendt, Leslie Berry, Carly Zadarozny, Shanta Heyman, Timothy Rhodes, Sarah Lynn Lopez, Karen Massey, Jack Johnson, Brittany Bilbrew, and Shannon Townsell, effective August 17th, 2021, upon the terms recommended by the superintendent, conditioned only upon receipt of a satisfactory criminal background report and upon receipt no later than August 1st, 2021, of evidence of proper legal qualifications for the position to be filled.
Second.
Roll call, please. Yes.
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 Yes. Motion carries. Do we have any discussion items tonight? Okay. Is there any written communication to the board? There is not. All righty. Before we adjourn, I just want to say how excited I am to welcome the kids back to the buildings next week. It's going to be really good for schools to sound and feel like schools again. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.